The room went quiet, right after he said it. "You owe us everything." Not loud, not emotional, just certain, like it wasn't an opinion. Like it was a fact that had already been decided long before I walked into that room. I didn't respond immediately. Sometimes it's not the words that matter. It's the timing. And the timing of that sentence that was intentional. Carefully chosen. Placed right in front of witnesses. Family. Extended relatives. People who didn't know the full story, but were already nodding like they did. I looked around slowly. No one challenged him. No one asked what he meant. Because to them, it sounded right. Be parents' sacrifice. Children owe. Simple. Clean. Comfortable. That house, he continued, gesturing slightly behind him like everything in his life was evidence, that education, that life you have, none of it would exist without us. There it was. The list. Not love, not care, not support. A transaction B, every memory reduced to a debt. Every moment turned into something that could be counted, measured, repaid. I nodded once, not agreeing, just acknowledging that he had said what he came here to say. "And now," he added, leaning forward slightly, lowering his voice just enough to feel more personal, "it's time you return it. Return it like it was borrowed, like it had an expiration date, like everything I had built since then. Didn't matter." Exhaled slowly. Still calm, still controlled. Because reacting too early would have ruined everything. And this needed to play out exactly right. "You've done well for yourself," one of my uncles chimed in, trying to sound supportive, but only reinforcing the point. No one's denying that. But don't forget where you came from. Don't forget. Another phrase people use when they want control without saying it directly. I glanced at him briefly, and back at my dad. He hadn't taken his eyes off me, not once. Waiting, expecting, confident. Because in his mind, this conversation was already over. He had the moral high ground, the audience, the narrative. All I had to do was agree. That's how he saw it. That's how they all saw it. "You're right," I said finally. That got their attention. Not because of what I said, but because of how easily I said it. My dad leaned back slightly, just a little, but enough. That small shift of someone who thinks they've won. "Good," he said. Simple. Satisfied. But that's the thing about expectations. They only work when you actually understand the full picture, and none of them did. Not yet. Not even close. I reached into my bag slowly. It's deliberately, not rushed, not dramatic. It's just enough to draw attention without forcing it, because now timing mattered more than ever. "What are you doing?" he asked, a slight edge entering his voice for the first time. Curiosity, mixed with control. I didn't answer. I just placed the folder on the table in front of him. Clean, neat, prepared. Not something put together in a moment of emotion. Something planned. Something finalized. The room shifted, subtle, but noticeable, because now there was something physical in front of them, something that didn't fit their version of the story. My dad looked at the folder, then at me, then back at the folder. "What is this?" he asked. I met his gaze, calm, unshaken. "The part you forgot," I said. And just like that, the balance in the room began to change. For a moment, he didn't touch the folder, just looked at it, like opening it might confirm something he wasn't ready to face. "What is this supposed to be?" he asked again, this time slower, careful, measured. The confidence was still there, but thinner now, less certain. I didn't answer. Immediately, because this wasn't about rushing. It was about letting the weight of the moment settle before anything else moved. "You said I owe you everything," I replied calmly. A few heads nodded. Around the room, agreement, expectation, support that hadn't been questioned even once. So I figured, I continued, "We should make everything clear." That word again, clear. It sounds simple, until clarity starts revealing things people were never prepared to see. My dad let out a short breath, almost a scoff. "You don't need paperwork to understand what I'm saying," he said. "This isn't business." No, to him it wasn't, because business requires records, agreements, proof. And this conversation had always relied on something else. Emotion, authority, assumption. I agree. I said, That made him pause just slightly because agreement was still not the reaction he expected. But this is, I added, tapping the folder lightly. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Sharp. Final enough to draw every eye in the room back to it. My uncle leaned forward a little. "What exactly is in there?" he asked. Curiosity had replaced certainty now. Not completely, but enough. I glanced toward the door. Briefly, timing, still perfect. "Documentation," said simply. That word landed differently, heavier, more serious, less easy to dismiss. My dad finally reached for the folder slowly. Not rushed, like he was trying to stay in control of something that had already begun slipping, but before he could open it. The door behind us opened, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to shift attention instantly. Footsteps followed, steady, confident, uninterrupted. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. I already knew. "Sorry I'm late," a voice said from behind. .com. Professional, precise, but not uncertain. Never uncertain. My dad's hand froze on the folder, half-dash open. His eyes lifted toward the door. Confusion, then recognition, then something else. Something tighter. "Who is this?" he asked, the edge in his voice returning, but sharper now. Less controlled, more reactive. I turned slightly. Just enough. "This," said, "is the person who made sure everything is accurate."
Oh.
The lawyer stepped fully into the room, suit perfectly. Pressed, expression neutral. Eyes observant. The kind of presence that doesn't need attention, but commands it anyway. A few relatives shifted in their seats, because now, this wasn't just a conversation anymore. This had structured, form, authority, and that changes everything. We weren't expecting anyone else. My dad said quickly, too quickly, because unexpected things. "No," I replied. Calmly, "You weren't." The lawyer walked closer, not rushed, not hesitant. Each step deliberate, each movement measured, until he reached the table and stopped. "Right, across from my dad? I believe you were discussing financial obligations," the lawyer said. His tone, polite but precise, not asking, confirming. My dad let out a small laugh, forced, dismissive, trying to pull the moment back into something familiar. "This is a family matter," he said, "not a legal one." The lawyer nodded once, like he had heard that before. "Many times, I understand," said, then placed a second document on the table, right next to the folder. But the records suggest otherwise. Just like that, the conversation stopped. Being emotional and started becoming real. Asterisk. For a moment, no one spoke. Not my dad, not my uncle, not even the relatives who had been so quick to agree. It's just minutes ago. Because something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. "What?" "Records," my dad asked finally. The confidence was still there. But now it had edges, sharp ones. The kind that come out when control starts slipping. The lawyer didn't. Rush didn't react to the tone. He simply opened the folder, carefully, precisely like this. Wasn't a confrontation, just a process. "Financial transfers," he said calmly. "Property allocations. Educational funding structures. And long-term repayment agreements." Each word landed heavier than the last. Not emotional, not aggressive. Just factual, and facts are harder to argue with. That doesn't mean anything. My uncle said quickly, leaning forward like he could push the moment back into something manageable. "Parents spend money on their children. That's normal." The lawyer nodded slightly. "Correct," he said, and it's given us support. That pause, small but intentional. The kind of pause that prepares the room for what comes next, but not when it's structured as recoverable investment. Silence. Real silence, because that word didn't fit their version of the story. Investment, not. Care, not sacrifice. Something else. Something measurable. Something reversible. "That's ridiculous," my dad said sharply. "I never you signed it." The interruption wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It cut through everything. Clean. Final. My dad stopped completely. Because now the conversation wasn't about interpretation anymore. It was about evidence. The lawyer slid one of the documents across the table. Not aggressively, just enough for it. To reach him, you can review the signature here. He said .com, neutral, certain. My dad didn't pick it up. Immediately, he stared at it, like distance might change. What was on the page, like not touching it, would keep it from becoming real. That's not what this was, he said finally. But the words didn't land the same way anymore. They didn't carry authority. They carried doubt. Intent can be interpreted, the lawyer replied. But documentation is very clear. Clear that word again, but now it meant something different. Now it meant unavoidable. You agreed to structured repayment conditions tied to future earnings, he continued, which have, according to current financial records, already been exceeded. That word hit harder than anything before it, because now this wasn't about what I owed. It was about what I had already paid, and more. That doesn't make sense, my uncle said, but even he sounded less certain now. How can he owe anything back if he doesn't? The lawyer said. Simple, direct, final. The room shifted again, but this time it wasn't subtle, it was visible. People leaned. Glances were exchanged. Assumptions were breaking. Right. In front of them, my dad finally picked up the paper, his hands steady, but slower, careful, like he already knew what he was about to see and just didn't. Want to confirm it? His eyes moved across the page, line by line, detail by detail, and with each second, his expression changed. Not all at once, but enough for everyone to notice. What is this number? He asked quietly. No anger, no authority, just confusion. The lawyer didn't hesitate. Total reimbursed amount, he said, including adjusted interest based on the original terms. Interest, another word that didn't belong in a family conversation, unless it was never just family to begin with. My dad looked up straight at me, and for the first time since I walked in, he didn't look certain. He looked unsure, like the story he had believed in was no longer holding together, and that's when it finally started to break. Asterisk, the number didn't just sit on the page, stayed there, heavy, unavoidable. For a long moment, he didn't speak. His eyes remained fixed on the document, like if he read it enough times, it might change, like the total might shrink, like the meaning behind it might soften. It didn't. That's not possible, he said finally, but the words came out quieter than before, not defensive, not commanding, just uncertain. The room felt different now. No one was nodding anymore. No one was backing him up. The same. People who had supported him minutes ago were now watching carefully, like they were seeing a version of him they hadn't expected. The lawyer didn't interrupt, didn't push. He simply let the silence do its work. Because silence, in moments like this, forces understanding, you're saying. My dad started, then stopped, restarted, slower this time. You're saying he doesn't owe anything? As the lawyer met his gaze. I'm saying he replied calmly that based on the agreements you signed, the financial obligations have already been fulfilled and exceeded. That word again, exceeded. It echoed louder this time, because now everyone understood what it meant. Not only had I repaid everything, I had gone beyond it. My uncle leaned back in his chair, his earlier confidence completely gone. So, there's nothing left? No, the lawyer said. There isn't. The finality in that answer settled across the table like weight, something irreversible, something that couldn't be argued away or reframed. My dad looked back down at the paper again, slower this time, more carefully. And that's when his eyes stopped at the bottom of the page, second section, separate, highlighted. What is this? He asked. His voice had changed again, lower, tighter, because instinctively he knew this part mattered even more. The lawyer stepped forward slightly. Outstanding balance, he said. The words didn't make sense at first, not in the way my dad understood them. Outstanding, he repeated. That doesn't make any. It's what remains, the lawyer clarified. Pause. Then clearly, on your side. Silence. Complete. Because now the direction had changed. Completely. My dad blinked once, then again, like his mind was rejecting the sentence before it could fully process it. "That's wrong," he said quickly. "There's no way I owe." The lawyer turned the document slightly, just enough for the number to face him clearly. No explanation. No added pressure. Just visibility. And that was enough, because numbers don't argue. They don't adjust themselves based on emotion. They stay exactly what they are. And this one didn't match the story he had been telling. At all. My dad's grip on the paper tightened. Not aggressively, but unconsciously. Like he needed to hold on to something solid while everything else shifted. "How?" he asked. One word. But this time, it wasn't a challenge. It was a question. A real one. And for the first time since this conversation started, he wasn't trying to prove something. He was trying to understand it. Asterisk for a moment. No one answered him. Not me. Not the lawyer. Not anyone in the room. Because this was the part where the truth doesn't get pushed. It gets realized, and realization takes a second to land. "How?" he asked again. Quieter this time. Less force. More. "Wait." The lawyer adjusted the document slightly, not to emphasize it, just to make it easier to read. "The original agreement included conditional returns," he said calmly. "Not just on what was provided, but on how it was structured." My dad didn't respond. His eyes were still scanning, searching for something that could undo what he was seeing. "There were clauses tied to time," the lawyer continued. "Delays, adjustments, compounding interest." Interest, that word again. But now, it wasn't just technical, it was personal. "Every year that passed without formal closure increased the total," he added. That's when it clicked. Not all at once, but enough. Enough for the tension in his shoulders to shift, enough for the room to feel it. "You never closed it," said quietly. He looked up at me, slow, heavy, because, like now he remembered, the conversations, the documents, the moments he had. "Signed without thinking beyond control. You said we'd settle it later," I continued. "That there was no rush." Later, such a harmless word, until it isn't. I didn't think he started, then stopped, because what he didn't think about was exactly what this had become. The lawyer didn't interrupt, didn't add pressure. He just confirmed. The terms were clear, he said. Postponement didn't remove the obligation. It increased it. Increased everything about this had moved in one direction. Not in his favor. Never in his favor. My uncle shifted again, this time more noticeably. "So you're saying," he said slowly, "that while he thought he was owed, he was accumulating." "Debt," the lawyer finished, clean, precise, final. The room went still again. But this silence felt different. Not confusion, understanding, the kind that doesn't need explanation anymore. My dad leaned back slightly, the paper still in his hands, but now it wasn't something he controlled. It was something he was holding on to, trying to process, trying to accept. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this," he said. And that sentence said everything because it revealed the truth beneath all of it. This had never been about fairness. It had been about expectation, assumption, control. "I know," replied calmly. Not cold, not harsh, just honest. That's why I didn't say anything. Before, his eyes met mine again. And this time, there was no authority in them. No certainty. Just realization. Slow. Heavy. Unavoidable. Double quotes. "You let this build," he asked, not accusing. Just trying to understand the timeline. "I followed what you signed," he said. Simple, direct, nothing added, nothing removed. Because that was the reality of it. No tricks, no manipulation, just structure and time. The two things people underestimate the most. He looked down at the number one more time, then closed his eyes. Briefly, just for a second, like he needed that moment to reset everything he thought he knew. When he opened them again, he didn't argue. He didn't deny it. He just asked one thing. What happens now? And that was the moment everything fully turned. Asterisk, the question didn't echo. It didn't need to, because everyone in that room was already waiting for the answer. Not just him. All of them. Watching, listening, understanding that whatever came next would define everything that had just been exposed. The lawyer didn't rush to respond. He glanced at me. It was brief, professional, but intentional, because now this wasn't just about documents anymore. It was about decision, and the decision was mine. There are options, the lawyer said finally, his tone calm, structured, controlled. The outstanding balance can be settled through payment, asset transfer, or renegotiated terms. Each option landed clearly. No emotion, no judgment, just reality. My dad listened without interrupting, without reacting, because for the first time, didn't have control over the direction of the conversation, or, lawyer added, the creditor can choose to waive the balance entirely. Waive. That word shifted the room again. Subtle, but powerful, because now the outcome wasn't fixed. It depended on me. My uncle looked at me, then at my dad, then back at me, trying to read something, anything, but I didn't move, didn't react, because this moment, it wasn't about pressure, it was about clarity. My dad finally lifted his eyes, meeting mine, and this time, there was no pride left, no expectation, just something quieter, something real. I didn't mean for it to become this, said. And the first time, didn't sound like an excuse. It sounded like truth. I know, replied, because I did. That was the complicated part. None of this started as something calculated. It became this. Over time, through decisions, through assumptions, through things left unfinished, I thought I was helping, he added. And then you started measuring it, said calmly. Not accusing, not harsh, just clear. He didn't deny it, didn't argue, because there was nothing left to defend. The room stayed quiet, not tense, not uncomfortable, just still waiting, because now the only thing that mattered is what I would do next. I looked at the document one last time. The number, the structure, the weight of everything that had built up over the years. Then I closed the folder. Slowly, deliberately. The sound was soft, but final. I'm not here to collect from you, I said. A few heads lifted, slightly surprised. My dad didn't move, didn't he react yet, because he wasn't assuming anymore? I just needed you to understand, I continued, that nothing I have was owed back to you. The words settled gently, but firmly, because that was the truth beneath all of this. Not the money, not the agreement, respect, understanding, balance. I don't owe you everything. Gassaid.com. Clear, final, and you don't owe me anything either. The lawyer nodded once. Small. Acknowledging the decision, the structure had done its job. The truth had done the rest. My dad exhaled slowly, not defeated, not broken, just changed, because now he understood something he hadn't before. Not about money, about boundaries, about what can't be turned into a transaction. I picked up the folder, turned toward the door, and walked out. Not rushed, not dramatic, just done. And this time, no one in that room questioned who owed what, because now they knew.